My life was set. 32 years old, a good job I didn't hate, a wife, Alara, who I swore I worshipped, and a family so damn close. It was practically a single breathing organism. Until last year, everything felt solid, predictable, safe. Now I look back and see a gilded cage of my own making. Alara was 30. We'd been together 6 years, married for 3. 6 years of simmering tension, masked smiles, and a constant, low-level anxiety that I did my best to ignore. It stemmed from one thing: my family. There! A lot. Sunday dinners at my parents' house that felt like a goddamn reunion every week. Group vacations where we practically tripped over each other. Christmas at my mom and dad's, every corner crammed with siblings, cousins, aunts, uncles, and half the neighborhood. I grew up in that chaos. I loved it. I needed it, I thought. Alara? Not so much. She came from a small, quiet family. They saw each other a few times a year, kept their lives separate, and generally avoided large gatherings like they were the plague. From the start, my family overwhelmed her. She'd bristle when my mom showed up unannounced, even though mom did that to everyone. She'd roll her eyes when my sister, Maya, called to chat for an hour about nothing. "It's like I'm married to your entire family, not just you," she'd say, her voice tight with frustration. The words felt like a punch to the gut every time. The tension was always there, a tightrope we walked every damn day, but it didn't truly erupt until Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving, the day my life shattered. Like always, we were at my parents' place. The house vibrated with noise, the air thick with the smell of turkey and passive aggression. Alara looked like she wanted to bolt. I kept checking on her, forcing a smile. "You okay, babe?" "Fine," she'd snap, her eyes darting around the room like she was searching for an escape route, but she was anything but fine. Then Maya, sweet, innocent Maya, dropped the bomb. "Alara, you never help out with anything at these dinners." The room went silent. All the forced cheer vanished. Alara's face flushed. I didn't know I was expected to work at a family dinner. Frankly, I'm not even sure I wanted to come. Maya rolled her eyes. That infuriating little gesture that always pushed Alara over the edge. "Well, maybe some people just aren't cut out for a big family." Alara stood up. Her voice, normally soft, was a steel blade. "I'm tired of everyone in this family acting like I'm the problem." The air crackled. My mom tried to smooth things over, but it was too late. Alara barely spoke for the rest of the night, her eyes fixed on some distant point beyond the chaos. That Thanksgiving wasn't just awkward. It was a harbinger, a taste of the storm that was about to tear my world apart. A week later, she sat me down in our living room, the silence heavy and suffocating. "I can't do this anymore, Liam." Her voice was calm, too calm. It scared me more than yelling would have. "What do you mean?" I asked, my throat tight. I knew what was coming. I just didn't want to hear it. "I feel like an outsider, Liam. In my own marriage. No matter what I do, I'll never be your priority. I'm tired of fighting for a place in your life that your family already owns." The words stung. They were true in a way, but I didn't want to admit it. I don't know what to say," I stammered. "Then let me be clear," she said, her eyes locked on mine. "Either you set firm boundaries with your family or I'm leaving." The world tilted. My breath hitched. "Leaving?" She couldn't be serious. "Alara, you can't ask me to do that," I pleaded. "They're my family, and I'm your wife. Shouldn't that count for something?" I tried to reason with her, to explain how important my family was, how much they meant to me, but she wasn't listening. She'd made up her mind. So I did what any spineless idiot would do. I went to my family. I laid it all out. The ultimatum, Alara's feelings, everything. It went about as well as you'd expect. They were defensive. "She's overreacting," Maya shrieked. "She's been looking for an excuse to pull you away from us." My dad, his face grim, told me, "No woman should make a man choose between his wife and his family." My mom just cried, asking what she'd done wrong. I suggested marriage counseling, hoping we could find some middle ground, a way to bridge the chasm between them. Ilara refused. The issue isn't our marriage, Liam. It's your family. Christmas was a disaster. Ilara refused to come to the family party. My parents were furious. My dad, after a few too many whiskeys, called me a coward for letting my wife disrespect the family. When I got home and told Ilara, she snapped. I'm done, Liam. Done trying. Done feeling like an outsider. Done with your family altogether. Then came the hammer blow. The ultimatum doubled down, sharpened to a lethal point. If you want to stay married to me, you have to cut them off. All of them. Not a break. Not boundaries. Full. No contact. No calls. No visits. No family events. Erase them from my life, as if they never existed. I was trapped. Torn. I loved Ilara. I thought I did. But I loved my family too. I couldn't imagine a life without either of them. Ilara wasn't backing down. Her eyes held a cold, desperate fire. I need to be your priority, Liam, or I can't stay in this marriage. The pressure was crushing. The air was thick with unspoken threats. My chest was tight and aching. In the end, I chose her. It felt like ripping my own heart out. My parents were devastated. Maya was furious. You're spineless, she screamed before hanging up on me. My dad wouldn't even speak to me. I had to block half my family on social media because they kept trying to fix things. My mom left a voicemail, sobbing, saying she never thought I'd turn my back on them. The raw pain in her voice haunted my dreams. But Ilara? She was happy. For a few weeks at least. She was finally getting what she wanted. Or so I thought. The first few weeks after I cut off my family were strange. Ilara seemed relieved. No visits, no obligations, no expectations. She smiled more, slept better, and even started planning a weekend getaway, just the two of us. It should have felt like a victory. It felt like a betrayal. But the peace didn't last. Soon, relief turned into something else. Boredom, irritability, restlessness. It was like she had spent so much time fighting for this, she didn't actually know what to do once she had it. And me? I was drowning in the silence. For the first time in my life, there was no constant hum of family around me. No phone calls from my mom checking in, no random texts from my siblings, no invitations for Sunday dinner. The only sounds in the apartment were the hum of the fridge and Ilara typing on her laptop. The silence was deafening. I played my mom's last voicemail again, the one she left before I blocked her number. Her voice was shaky, pleading. She'd never been one for dramatics, but this time, she was barely holding it together. She just wanted to know why. Why had I turned my back on them? She said she never thought I'd abandon them like this. Then, silence. She didn't even say goodbye. I deleted the voicemail. It felt like erasing a part of myself. I put my phone down and stared at the ceiling for what felt like hours, the weight of my decision crushing me. Ilara started noticing. Why are you so quiet? She'd ask, her brow furrowed. Why do you seem so distant? Every time she caught me lost in thought, she'd sigh and walk away. She never brought up my family, not even once. It was as if they didn't exist, like I'd never had a life before her. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was a void, a constant reminder of what I'd lost. Then the wedding invitation came. It was from my cousin, Michael. He was getting married in a few months, and I was invited. Just me. Ilara's name wasn't on the invite. No +1. Michael sent a text right after. Don't want drama at my wedding. Still want you there, but she's not welcome. The words were like a slap in the face. I knew my family resented Ilara, but this was blatant. Ilara saw the text before I could even hide it. She didn't yell. She just stood there, gripping her phone so tightly her knuckles turned white. Then she turned the screen toward me, her eyes burning with a cold fury. This is proof, Liam. Proof that your family will never respect me. Even after you chose me over them, they still treat me like an outsider. The air crackled. I felt trapped, suffocated. Then she made it clear. You're either with me or you're with them. If you want to go to that wedding, take it as a betrayal. Our marriage is over. I needed time to think. I told her those words, but it was the wrong answer to give. The tension that had been simmering beneath the surface finally boiled over. That night, Alara barely spoke to me. She slammed drawers while brushing her teeth, tossed the blankets aggressively when she got into bed. If I tried to say anything, she'd act like I wasn't even there. I hadn't RSVP'd to the wedding. Another week passed. The invitation sat on the counter, a silent accusation. I didn't bring it up, but I also couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing something essential to me. So I did the unthinkable. I met my brother. Then the wedding invitation came. It was from my cousin, Michael. He was getting married in a few months, and I was invited. Just me. Alara's name wasn't on the invite. No +1. Michael sent a text right after. Don't want drama at my wedding. Still want you there, but she's not welcome. The words were like a slap in the face. I knew my family resented Alara, but this was blatant. Alara saw the text before I could even hide it. She didn't yell. She just stood there, gripping her phone so tightly her knuckles turned white. Then she turned the screen toward me, her eyes burning with a cold fury. This is proof, Liam. Proof that your family will never respect me. Even after you chose me over them, they still treat me like an outsider. The air crackled. I felt trapped, suffocated. Then she made it clear. You're either with me or you're with them. If you want to go to that wedding, take it as a betrayal. Our marriage is over. I needed time to think. I told her those words, but it was the wrong answer to give. The tension that had been simmering beneath the surface finally boiled over. That night, Alara barely spoke to me. She slammed drawers while brushing her teeth, tossed the blankets aggressively when she got into bed. If I tried to say anything, she'd act like I wasn't even there. I hadn't RSVP'd the wedding. Another week passed. The invitation sat on the counter, a silent accusation. I didn't bring it up, but I also couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing something essential to me. So I did the unthinkable. I met my brother. I texted Jake from my work phone, told him I had 20 minutes. We met at a coffee shop a few blocks from my office. He looked different, tired, like he hadn't been sleeping. He didn't ask why I'd cut everyone off. He just told me what I already knew. Our parents were devastated. My mom cried almost every night. My dad refused to talk about it, but kept staring at his phone like he was waiting for me to call. Maya was still angry. Everyone else was confused. They miss you, man, Jake said, his voice low. I just sat, a stone in my chest. I told him I was sorry. He just nodded, finished his coffee, and left. 20 minutes. That's all it took to shatter the carefully constructed wall I'd built around myself. 20 minutes to realize I was living a lie. Lisa found out. Of course, she did. I went back to work feeling like the weight had lifted. My pace was faster, and I didn't feel the same pressure. But the silence couldn't be held back. I was in the kitchen making dinner when she stormed in, waving a piece of paper. My bank statement. She had seen the charge from the coffee shop. "Who were you with?" she demanded, her voice sharp. I didn't answer. I couldn't bring myself to lie, but I knew the truth would be devastating. She threw the paper on the counter. Was it them? Did you meet with your family behind my back? The argument was worse than Thanksgiving. Worse than Christmas. This wasn't just frustration. This was pure, unadulterated anger. She accused me of lying, of sneaking around, of never truly choosing her. She didn't let me explain. She didn't want to hear it. I kept my gaze down. How could I explain the deep pit of guilt that formed in my gut every time I thought about my family? How could I justify the love for them? Then she grabbed her bag, walked out, and slammed the door behind her. She didn't come back that night. The next 3 days were a living hell. She barely spoke to me. The silent treatment was worse than yelling. It was like I wasn't even there. Work became unbearable. I started zoning out in meetings. I missed deadlines. My boss pulled me aside, asking if everything was okay at home. I lied and said I was just tired. Then, out of nowhere, my phone buzzed. A text from my dad. "We still love you, son." That was it. No long message, no guilt trip, just 6 words. 6 words that shattered the last of my resolve. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my hands ached. I had convinced myself I was doing the right thing, that cutting my family off was the only way to keep my marriage intact. But for the first time, I asked myself if it was worth it. Why did it feel so wrong? What did I truly have to lose? I tried. For the next few days after Alara stormed out, I made every effort to patch things up. I asked if she wanted to talk, if we could go out for dinner, if she wanted to get away for the weekend. She barely responded. When she did, it was short and cold. At home, it was like living with a stranger. We barely spoke. She didn't sit next to me on the couch. She went to bed early and shut the door behind her. It was obvious this wasn't just about the coffee shop anymore. The wedge she always fought to put between me and my family had grown large enough for us to be separate. Then the wedding came up again. I thought the issue had passed since I hadn't RSVP'd. But Alara brought it up one night. Out of nowhere. She asked if I had made my decision. I told her I was going. I didn't even get to finish my sentence before she walked away. Minutes later, she reappeared with a bag packed. She stood by the door, her phone in her hand. A moment later, my phone buzzed. "Staying with a friend." "Don't wait up." She left. The wedding was the next day. I wasn't sure what to expect when I got there. I hadn't spoken to most of my family since cutting them off. I had a few short text exchanges. But the moment I stepped inside the venue, my mother saw me. She didn't say a word. She just wrapped her arms around me, holding on like she was afraid I'd disappear again. When she finally pulled away, she wiped her eyes, looked me over, and simply said, "You look too thin." That was it. No lectures, no guilt trips, just relief. Just a mother seeing her child again. The rest of the night was a blur of hugs, laughter, and conversations that felt like they had been waiting to happen for months. Maya didn't even bring up Alara. She just clinked her glass against mine and said, "Took you long enough." At some point, my dad pulled me aside. He wasn't the emotional type, but he looked me in the eye and told me that no matter what, I would always be their son. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe. I had my family again, and even that wasn't enough to make me feel whole. That feeling didn't last long. When I got home, Alara was waiting. She was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, completely calm. Too calm. The moment she saw me, she put the phone down and stood up. Her arms were crossed and a strange look came over her. Then the questions started. Why did I go? Did I not understand what this meant for our marriage? Did I not see how this was proof that I had never truly chosen her? She wasn't yelling, but her voice was sharp, each word hitting harder than the last. I told her I had to go, that I couldn't keep cutting my family off just to prove something to her, that it wasn't fair to keep making me choose. She just shook her head. Then she said it, the words I'd been dreading, the words that would change everything. I can't be with someone who prioritizes his family over his wife. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't an argument. It was a decision. I didn't respond. I just stood there, waiting for her to take it back, to say she was just angry, that we could fix this. But she didn't. She just walked into the bedroom, grabbed another bag, and started packing. By the next morning, she was gone. The first few days felt surreal. The apartment was quieter than ever, but not in the way it had been before. This wasn't peace. This was emptiness. At work, I kept reaching for my phone, expecting a text that never came. At home, I half expected to see her shoes by the door, but the place was exactly as she had left it, like she had never really been there to begin with. A week later, Alara came back, not to talk, not to work things out, just to grab the rest of her things. She moved in with her friend. No mention of fixing anything, No suggestion of trying again, just an unspoken understanding that this was over. That night, my brother stopped by. He didn't say much, just handed me a beer and sat down next to me. After a long pause, he finally said, "You did the right thing, you know." I didn't answer. I just nodded because for the first time, I wasn't so sure. Alara disappeared from my life almost overnight. After she moved out, she blocked me on everything. Social media, texts, calls, gone, erased, except when she needed something. At first, she acted like she wanted nothing to do with me. Complete and total detachment. The cold shoulder. But then the cracks started showing. Late-night texts that were quickly deleted. Accidental likes on my old posts. Even mutual friends saying she kept asking about me. For someone who had walked away so easily, she sure seemed desperate to keep a foot in my life. At first, I thought maybe she just needed space, that after some time, we'd sit down and have a real conversation. But then her friend, Chloe, reached out. Alara wanted to start discussing legal separation. The message caught me off guard. I hadn't even processed the breakup, and now she was already treating it like a done deal. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I sat there in the dark, scrolling through old pictures of us. Vacations, holidays, random nights on the couch watching movies. It felt like looking at someone else's life, a life that was no longer mine. My family, on the other hand, didn't bother hiding their relief. My mom called for the first time in months, her voice lighter than it had been in a long time. My dad, who rarely gave his opinion on anything emotional, muttered something about how it was for the best. Even Maya, who had been my biggest critic, invited me out for dinner, but I wasn't sure how I felt. The freedom to be with my family felt good, but I missed the comfort of my wife. The next few weeks turned into a mess of rumors and half-truths. Mutual friends started taking sides. Some reached out to tell me Alara had been saying I emotionally abandoned her, that she had no choice but to leave because my family had brainwashed me against her. Others admitted they thought Alara's ultimatum was unfair, that she had been isolating me long before the Thanksgiving fight. At one point, I saw that Alara had deleted every picture of me from her social media. The captions on her new posts were vague but pointed. Things about knowing your worth and walking away from what doesn't serve you. It felt like a calculated campaign to paint me as the bad guy. Then came the email. It wasn't personal. No, how are you? No acknowledgement of what we had been through, just a formal list of what she expected in the separation. At the top of the list, spousal support. Alara wanted me to cover her rent for 6 months. She said she had uprooted her life for me, and it was only fair that I helped her get back on her feet. It didn't make sense. We had always been financially independent. We split rent, bills, vacations, everything. She had a stable job, no debt. She didn't need my money. I felt a surge of anger. Was this what this was all about? Was she trying to punish me for choosing my family? I met with a lawyer. His advice was simple: don't agree to anything. Not yet. A few days later, Alara broke her silence. Late at night, she sent a text, "I miss how things used to be." For a moment, I thought this was it. The conversation I had been waiting for. The first sign that maybe we could fix things. I called her. She answered after a few rings but didn't say anything at first. Just silence on the other end. Then, slowly, she started talking. She didn't apologize. She didn't say she wanted to work things out. She cried. She blamed me for everything. For choosing my family. For making her feel like she was never enough. For forcing her to leave. I listened. I let her talk. Then I told her I wasn't going to beg her to stay if she had already made up her mind. She hung up. I needed a break. Then Chloe dropped another bombshell. She had confided in some friends that she didn't think she could tolerate it long term. That Thanksgiving fight? It wasn't just frustration. It was her way of pushing things to a breaking point, so she could justify leaving. She had been mentally checking out for a while, but I had been too blind to see it. Had she ever truly respected my family? Or had she just been waiting for a way to separate me from them? It didn't matter anymore. This was happening. No more thinking about what ifs. No more hoping for a last-minute fix. Alara wanted out. And, for the first time, I started wondering if that might be a good thing. A few weeks after Alara's last message, an official letter arrived from her lawyer. It wasn't just about rent anymore. She was now demanding a portion of my savings. The justification? Alara claimed she had supported me emotionally while I built my career, and, because of that, she was entitled to financial compensation. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the letter. The same person who had walked out of our marriage without hesitation was now claiming she had been my foundation. The same person who told me I had never truly chosen her was now acting like I owed her something. I laughed, a bitter, hollow laugh. I called my lawyer. His response was short: "She has no case." "Don't give her a cent," word got to my family quickly. My mom was livid. My dad, who rarely had strong opinions on anything, shook his head and muttered, "She's shameless." Even Maya, who had spent months calling me spineless, told me to lawyer up and shut her down. Part 15, the co-worker. Then came the second bombshell. A friend mentioned, almost casually, that Alara had moved in with a co-worker. A male co-worker? At first, people insisted it was just a temporary situation, that she was crashing there while looking for a new place. But the details didn't add up. Their coworkers had noticed how close they had been for months. There had been rumors. Alara hadn't even officially divorced me yet, and she was already living with another man. The anger that had been simmering inside me finally boiled over. I didn't reach out. I didn't ask her to explain. Instead, I watched as her social media posts took a dramatic turn. She started posting vague messages about being betrayed by the one you love the most, about how some people pretend to be good but are just cowards. It wasn't subtle. Anyone who knew us knew exactly what she was doing. Then my lawyer called. Alara had officially filed for spousal support. I laughed. I couldn't help it. She had a full-time job, no kids, no financial dependency on me, but she still wanted to squeeze money out of me one last time. The situation became public at work when Alara posted a dramatic update on LinkedIn, something about starting over after betrayal. My boss, who had met Alara a few times at company events, pulled me aside after seeing it. He smirked and said, "Dodged a bullet, huh?" I didn't respond. I wasn't sure if I wanted to laugh or scream. Then, another surprise. One of Alara's old friends reached out and asked if we could meet. We sat across from each other at a cafe, and without hesitation, she told me the truth. Alara had been considering divorce long before the Thanksgiving incident. The ultimatum hadn't been a reaction to my family, it had been a test. She wanted to see if I would submit, if I would prove that I would always choose her over them. When I didn't, when I pushed back even slightly, she had her excuse to leave. I thought back to all the times she made passive-aggressive comments about my family, how she seemed relieved when I first cut them off, the way she had isolated me step by step, making sure I had no one but her. Then the final hypocrisy. Chloe said that Alara still expected my parents to help fund our future children's college tuition. She had wanted me to burn the bridges, but still expected those same bridges to be there when she needed them. It was madness. A few days later, Alara texted, "I think we should talk." Talk! Clear the air. I ignored it at first. Then she sent another. "I just want to explain some things." I agreed to meet. She looked different. Not in a drastic way, but enough that I noticed. More put together, more polished, but also more distant, like she had already moved on in her head. We sat in awkward silence while we waited for a waiter to appear. Alara picked a small, dark booth out of the way from the center of the restaurant. I could tell she had picked the place to meet. She admitted in a roundabout way that she might have overreacted, that maybe she had been too harsh. But even then, she still blamed me. She still insisted I hadn't chosen her in the way she needed. Then, casually, she mentioned that she was thinking of moving to another state, that she wanted a fresh start. I realized then that she had been mentally gone from our marriage long before she ever walked out the door. The man at the coffee shop may have been the reason she started the fight, but my marriage had been over for months before then. I had been in love with a ghost. I didn't argue. I didn't ask her to stay. I had nothing else to give. A week later, I signed the divorce papers. She didn't seem sad. She didn't even seem bitter anymore, just relieved. The guilt was gone. I walked out of that office knowing, without a doubt, that the woman I had loved was now just someone I used to know. My marriage was over, my family was broken. My phone rang. It was my mom. Her voice was full of life. "What are you doing for dinner?" I was over. I had to live a life I was proud of, even if it was without my wife. I knew that night everything was going to be all right. The first steps were taken. The healing was ready to start. 2 weeks after the divorce was finalized, Alara was on vacation. She wasn't alone. A picture popped up on my feed. Alara standing on a beach, cocktail in hand, sunglasses on, caption, "New beginnings." The guy next to her, the same male coworker she had been living with. He was cropped out of the picture, but the shadow gave him away. I stared at the picture for a moment, then closed the app. I was not going to dwell on her moving on. Later that day, a friend sent me a screenshot. Alara had soft launched this guy months ago. Subtle hints, pictures of drinks at the same restaurant, cropped group photos where only his arm was visible, vague captions about finding yourself. Alara hadn't just moved on quickly. She had been emotionally out of our marriage long before she walked away. The rebrand had begun. Her social media was now a mix of inspirational quotes and polished selfies. Independent, thriving, reclaiming my life. Every post carefully curated to paint a picture of someone who had risen from the ashes of a toxic relationship. It was infuriating. So calculated. So fake. People started talking. One of my friends admitted that they had known Alara was considering leaving me a year ago. She had vented about feeling trapped, about wanting a different life. The Thanksgiving fight had just been a tipping point, an excuse. Then the next piece fell into place. Alara's job situation wasn't as perfect as she made it seem. A coworker of hers, someone I barely knew but who had clearly been waiting for the right moment, messaged me. Alara and her new boyfriend hadn't just been coworkers. They had been caught in a compromising situation at work. HR had gotten involved. It wasn't a fireable offense, but it had caused enough drama that people noticed. The pieces were fitting together now. Everything was turning from a painful accident into an avoidable catastrophe. Then, out of nowhere, Alara's mom reached out. It wasn't a long message, just an apology. She didn't defend Alara. She didn't ask for anything, just acknowledged that things could have been handled differently. Even her own family saw the truth. My family, on the other hand, welcomed me back without hesitation. No lectures, no I told you so's, just invitations, Sunday dinner, birthday parties. A text from my dad telling me that I should come over and watch the game. The part of my life that Alara had tried to erase was still there, waiting for me. Then the final twist. Alara was struggling. A friend mentioned it in passing. She had moved into a smaller place, was dealing with financial stress, and, most importantly, regretted how fast she had pushed for the divorce. A few days later, she reached out. "I just want to talk." I didn't respond. For a moment, I considered it. One last conversation. One last chance to hear whatever excuse she had lined up. Then another message arrived. The coworker, the one she left me for, their relationship had already fallen apart. It didn't take long. Once their company found out, everything became messy. He distanced himself. Alara, once again, was on her own. I didn't meet her. There was nothing left to say. Instead, I focused on moving forward. I started therapy. I reconnected with old friends. I deleted the last picture of us from my phone. and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. I had to put the memories away and start to plan a life with the future in mind. Then, just when I thought it was over, Alara messaged me again. I made a mistake. I smiled. Bitter, cynical. I blocked her and never looked back. This wasn't regret, I knew. This was an attempt to regain the power she had lost, the life she had failed to make. This was not a true apology. Alara didn't take being ignored well. After I blocked her, she started reaching out to mutual friends, asking if I hated her. Some ignored her. Others relayed the messages back to me, mostly out of curiosity. The pattern was the same. She just wanted to talk. She regretted how things ended. She didn't expect things to turn out like this. She had spent so much time playing the victim. She had begun to believe her own lies. Then came the email. She sent it through my work email, the only place I hadn't blocked her yet. Subject line: closure. It was long. Too long. She wrote about how she had made a mistake, how she had been caught up in her emotions, how she didn't realize what she had until it was gone. She wanted to meet one last time just to clear the air. I didn't respond. Some air needs no clearing. Then the lies started unraveling. A friend reached out with something interesting. Alara had spent months telling people that I was controlling and emotionally abusive. That's why she left me, according to her version of the story. But now that I wasn't reacting, she was backtracking, trying to spin a new narrative. Maybe I overreacted. Maybe I pushed him away. Her desperation was growing. The male coworker she had moved in with, that relationship crashed and burned after their workplace found out about them. It didn't take long for things to spiral. First, HR got involved. Then, Alara was written up. Then, after a few heated discussions with management, she was out. No job, no relationship, no financial support. She moved in with another friend, but that didn't last long either. Without her share of the rent, tensions grew. This was everything she hated and fought against when she was with me. I thought this would be everything she wanted. Then came the social media meltdown. A long, dramatic Instagram story about sometimes we push away the people who love us most. A caption about learning lessons too late. A black and white picture of her staring at the ocean like she was in a music video. Mutual friends sent me screenshots. I laughed. Then she tried a different approach. She reached out to my mom. It started with a short message apologizing for how things had ended. Then she started reminiscing, bringing up good memories and how she missed everyone. My mom kept it short. She told Alara that I was doing great without her. Then Alara went quiet. The damage had been done. Meanwhile, my life had never been better. I focused on work, spent more time with my family, and started traveling, something Alara had never wanted to do with me. The weight I had been carrying for years was gone. Then Alara's friends started turning on her. The people who had originally supported her were realizing the truth. She had lied. She had manipulated. She had made me the villain when, in reality, she had been planning her exit for a long time. The tide had shifted. The final bombshell came from a former coworker of hers. Alara had been flirting with multiple men at work before leaving me. The Thanksgiving fight, the ultimatum, the sudden shift in our relationship, it wasn't just about my family, it was about her lining up a backup plan. But that plan had fallen apart, and now everyone saw her for what she really was. Then, in one last desperate attempt for attention, Alara posted an old picture of us. Caption: some things should have worked out. The comment section was brutal. A mutual friend commented, "You had a good one, and you threw it away." Alara deleted the post within an hour. That was the last time I ever thought about her, and for the first time, I felt completely free. The guilt was gone, and all I felt was pity. A year passed. Alara's life had become a complete mess. She had moved twice, first crashing at a friend's place, then getting her own apartment, only to move again after her finances took a hit. She had gone through 2 more relationships, both short-lived and filled with drama. The male coworker? Long gone. The guy after him lasted a few months before he suddenly realized she wasn't what he wanted. Alara tried to rebrand herself online. Her new identity, a self-healing, independent woman. Her posts were full of vague empowerment quotes and long-winded captions about growing through pain. But mixed in with all the positivity were bitter comments about learning who truly loves you and people who pretend to be good but betray you. It was the same pattern, blame shifting, playing the victim, never acknowledging that she had been the one to blow up her own life. Then she made a bold move. She started a podcast, Navigating Breakups and Healing. The first few episodes were exactly what you'd expect. Her version of the divorce, twisted to make her look like the strong, misunderstood woman who had to walk away from a toxic situation. She never said my name, but anyone who knew us knew exactly who she was talking about. The podcast flopped. Nobody wanted breakup advice from someone whose life was still a train wreck. Her followers, the same ones who had originally rallied behind her, started losing patience. People who had once supported her were now calling her out, saying she needed to move on instead of playing the victim in a story she created. Meanwhile, my life had never been better. I had reconnected with old friends, rebuilt my career, and, most importantly, I was dating again. Her name was Emily. She was nothing like Alara. No ultimatums, no controlling behavior. She actually encouraged me to stay close to my family. The first time she met them, she fit in so easily. It was like she had always been there. Then Alara found out. Within days, her posts changed. Some people move on too fast. It's wild how quickly people forget what you meant to them. Healing takes time. Some people just distract themselves. She was spiraling again, and everyone saw it. Then, one night she posted a drunken voice note, rambling, slurring her words, crying, talking about how she wished she could take it all back. I deleted it without responding. A few weeks later, she tried one last thing, a real apology. No excuses, no justifications, just a simple message admitting that she had let her insecurities ruin our marriage, that she had made mistakes, that she regretted everything. I never responded. The guilt was gone. Then something incredible happened. It was my brother. Then she asked, "Are you happy?" I almost laughed. I didn't know I could be, but I feel like I have to live life now, not survive it. Her last-ditch effort to stay relevant? It didn't work. Her posts got fewer and fewer likes. The engagement dropped. Her once loyal followers had moved on, just like everyone else. Then, one day, she was gone. No more Instagram, no more podcast, no more bitter quotes. Alara deleted everything. I didn't even notice until a friend brought it up. It had been months since I last thought about her. That's when I knew I had truly moved on, that the cage I lived in for so long was finally, gloriously, broken, and I was free. A few months after Lisa disappeared from social media, a message popped up in my inbox. It was from one of her old best friends. "You won't believe what happened to Lisa." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. She sent another message anyway. Lisa was engaged. It had been months since I had spoken to Alara, 3 months after our divorce. It wasn't a slow-growing relationship. It was rushed, desperate, an announcement that felt more like a declaration of war than a celebration. She wasn't in love. She was proving a point. People started talking immediately. A friend dug up some details about the new guy, twice divorced, a history of cheating, a pattern of jumping from relationship to relationship. Lisa wasn't in love. She was desperate. It was obvious she was rushing into this to prove something to me, to our old mutual friends, maybe even to herself, like she needed to show the world that she had moved on faster, that she was happier, that she had won. The happiness was short-lived. 4 months later, she filed for divorce. Turns out her new husband had been cheating on her before they even got married. The breakup wasn't quiet. Lisa had spent so much time online preaching about true love and healing that when her marriage imploded, people noticed. Nobody took her seriously anymore. She wasn't a self-healing, independent woman. She was just a walking warning sign for bad relationships. Even her parents were embarrassed. They stopped defending her choices, stopped making excuses. Lisa had made a mess of her life, and even her own family had run out of patience. I had been walking around waiting for the storm to hit. Finally, it had passed. Then, out of nowhere, she tried to contact me again. A short message, no dramatic apology this time, just hope you're doing well. I ignored it. Meanwhile, my life kept getting better. I had moved in with Emily. We were planning a vacation together. My career was thriving. My family was closer than ever. The weight of Alara was finally gone. Then, one last message from Lisa. I wish I had chosen you the way you chose me. I didn't even open it. I had escaped. And for the first time in a long time, I was exactly where I was supposed to be,